Hello and welcome to episode 90 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is March 29th, 2021. Today I'm wearing something very new and something a bit older, and I'm wearing the Morning Dew shawl by Sarah Kincher. The German word is Morgentau, and I test knit it for her. And I really like that when I wear the shawl like this, you have the leaves on both sides, on both edges, and it looks really nice. And I used a lace yarn with a bit of glitter that I was gifted some time ago, and I held it double, and it's a very, very soft and squishy and extremely comfortable to wear. So when you look at the shawl, it has these leaves on just one of the edges. So it's quite easy to knit. It's a well-written pattern. I linked to the pattern on my Ravelry page, which is, you can find the link below the video, like the links to all the projects I talk about. Yeah, so this is the Morgentau shawl. And the pullover I'm wearing is a pattern by Nora that she designed and published on the Barocco website. And it's a free pattern. I think the only change I made is that, as you can see, the pullover is knit sideways, and you're supposed to knit from both the sleeves to the middle. And then she uses a 3-needle bind-off in the middle of the front and the back. So you have a faux seam. And I think she does it from the outside, so it's very visible and just gives a bit of interest to the pullover, because I think she designed it in a single color. But as I was using this Noro yarn, Noro Sekku, it's a lace yarn by Noro, and it has these many colors and stripes, I didn't want the seam. So what I did is I started both sleeves and knit. And then when I split for the front and back, I knit one side, I knit the front, and from the other side I knit the back, and then at the points where they met I knit it in Kitchener stitch, so you can't really tell where I sewed it together. And yeah, and I like it. It's just a fairly light pullover, and yeah, but as it's spring is finally here, at least at the moment, it seemed the right thing to wear today. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing. And then on to my projects, finished objects and works in progress. And actually today is one of these days that I was dreading when I signed up for the Sockmadness, because it feels as if I knit only Sockmadness socks. It's not quite true, but it does sort of feel like it, and I have neglected most of the projects I showed you last week. So what happened is that last week, Monday, I had no idea what was going to happen with the Sockmadness, and on Tuesday I worked a little bit on a few of my projects, and then on Wednesday I received the information that I am in Team B of the Sockmadness. That's Team Backdo, I think it's what it's called. And so that was very exciting, and there's a group for our group. There's a discussion thread for our group, so we could introduce ourselves and get to know the others. And then shortly after that, we got the specifications which sock was going to be knit. And then I thought I'd still have some time to work on stuff before the pattern drops, but the pattern came shortly afterwards. At the same time, I finally checked the due date for the crochet test pullover I'm crocheting, and I realized it was due on last Saturday. So I was working on the crochet pullover and the socks at the same time, hoping to finish the pullover, so that will be done on time, and then just knit on the socks as far as I get, and then see what happens. But I ran into problems with the pullover. I'll talk about that a bit later. So I wrote to the designer. I was in contact with her, but then I concentrated on the socks so that I did manage to finish the socks, but not the pullover. But as I said, I'll talk about that later. But my finished object for today are the Ebil Choices socks for round 1 of the Sockmadness this year. So this is the pattern that we were supposed to knit, and it's a very interesting cable pattern. And as you can see, it has a lot of purl stitches on the outside, which is rather unusual. And as you can also see, there is a left and a right sock. So the pattern is mirrored, and we had to knit a left and a right sock to pass. Oh, I sent the email that I finished. I put all the photos on my Ravelry page, and I'm waiting for the answer. I should have checked right before I started filming, but when I checked half an hour ago, I didn't have an answer yet. So I did my best. I'm pretty sure I'll pass. I don't think I made any mistakes. One of the interesting things about this pattern is because there are so many purl stitches, and a lot of people do not enjoy purling as much as knitting or the knit stitch. She wrote the pattern in such a way that you can knit it the way you see it, with many purl stitches and all the cables in knit stitches, so you see what you're doing. But she also wrote the whole pattern for both socks with all the charts and everything inside out. So you can choose to knit the sock inside out. It's a lot harder to see the cables then, but the pattern is really well written. If you do exactly what it says, then once you turn it around, you get a finished sock. Now, with the first sock, this is the one I knit first. This is the left sock. I decided to do the like the normal pattern, the way you look at it. So I did a lot of purl stitches, and I found that the pattern was fairly easy that way because I was seeing what I was doing, and I could see that the cables came out the way they were supposed to. But usually my gauge is not different for knit and purl stitches, but I have to be a bit more conscious of knitting as tightly with the purl stitches. And even if I concentrate on knitting tightly, I do tend to get these ladders where I was using double pointed needles, and these other lines where I switch needle. And it's not like too obvious, but if you concentrate, you can see those lines. And I felt that having to pull on my stitches so much was really hurting my hands with all those purl stitches. And also after I finished the first sock, I felt like I understood the pattern, and I decided to do the second one inside out, because I started the first sock on Wednesday when the pattern dropped, and then worked on it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then Saturday night I was almost done, but I was just too tired. So I knit the toe on Sunday morning, and I wanted to get the second sock finished as quickly as possible. But I knew if I did all the purl stitches, my hands just wouldn't be able to do it. They're hurting anyway. So I decided to do the second one inside out. And that was a very good idea, because knowing how the cables work and how the patterns work, how the decreases and increases work, it made the knitting itself a lot easier. And without having to concentrate at all, I don't have any of those letters, so you can't tell. These are the decreases. This is not where the needles met, and you can't see any of those letters on this sock. And I had to check my cables every now and then, and I did a few mistakes. So the first mistake was that because I was shifting to the second half of the instructions, I started knitting another left sock. But luckily I noticed a few rounds in, so I only had to rip out a few rounds. And then I think when I got to here, for some reason, I crossed this cable the wrong way round. No idea why, but I fixed that. And then there was another point when you start these roots. For some reason, probably because it was late last night, I misunderstood the direction of the cables, but I noticed at once that it was wrong, because I knew that that the purl stitches I was knitting had to be on top, and I knew what I was thinking didn't work out with what it should look like, so I checked and double checked to get it right. But yeah, if you follow the pattern, if you know what you're doing, it was a lot easier to knit the inside out sock. Yeah, but I'm really, really happy. They're finished, and the pattern is mirrored, and I do think I got everything right. The yarn is opal yarn. The series was called Sunrise. It's already a few years old, but I have lots of yarn in that color still here in my shop, and I had thought of using that color for the qualifying socks, because I have beads that really work very nicely with this color of the yarn. But then I didn't like this color for the flowers in the qualifying socks. But I thought for this tree-like pattern, I thought it was a nice match, and I chose to use it. And again, I knit the yarn the way it came, and the colors are almost exactly reversed with the purple and the yellow, and I'm very happy about it. I'm not going to keep the socks because they're a lot too big for me, and I don't want to undo anything and knit the toe again. I'm sure I'll find somebody who will like these socks and who they will fit. Yeah, so as I said, I did not work on a lot of the projects I showed you last week, so I decided I'll show the little progress I made. I'll talk about the test pullover, and then I'll just show you a few of the projects that I'm technically working on, but I haven't showed in a long time, and maybe that can motivate me to start working on them again. Okay, so socks. This is the longitudinal socks. I think you know all about it by now. Pattern by Nicola Susan. Nicolor is her designer name, and all I did is finish off the little ball of yarn that I had last week, and this is the leftover yarn that I was sent by a viewer, and now I can finish these socks. Yeah, didn't work on the London socks. I did work on the fingerless mitts a little bit. It's this beautiful pattern out of the Knit Happy with Self-Striping yarn book, and I added some rounds to the cuff. I was knitting it somewhere, I don't know, somewhere where I didn't have the first one, so I wasn't quite sure how many rounds I needed to do before I start the increases, and I haven't quite done them all, but yeah, I didn't want to knit too much, so that's why I stopped there. And as you can see, the colors don't match, which I like. Yeah, so that's all I did on these, but once I get into them again, they should be done fairly quickly. The next project I put a little work into is the baby jacket. This is the first part of the jacket. One of my friends said, "Oh, is that the one where you knit the armhole with a little bit around?" So basically that's what I did. That's the armhole, and it has a bit of fabric around, and I just knit a bit on the second piece, and again I just knit to the point where I had to split, or about the point. I haven't really checked, but as you can see, the colors are completely different. I really like that. Can't wait to start working on this again and see how things develop here. Yeah, so that's the second to last project I actually worked on. And the last project that I'm going to show you that I did work on is the test pullover for Heather by HGDC, and the test was supposed to be finished on last Saturday. I don't think she's published the pattern yet. I'm not quite sure, but as usual, as soon as she publishes the pattern, I will link her pattern on my project page, so you can all go and get your own copy of the pattern. This is what it looks like at the moment. This is one of the sleeves. This is the beginning and end of the rounds. So this will be like underneath the arm, and this is what the pullover looks like at the moment. So I joined the front and back at the shoulder, I crocheted around the neckline, and I attached the first sleeve. So far so good. The problem was that when I knit the front, when I crocheted the front and back, I felt that the neckline that was in the pattern was too small for me. I have a fairly big head, and the neckline was supposed to be rather small. And even though you crochet 6 rows on the front and on the back, I felt it was too small for me to get my head through comfortably. So I wrote to Heather, and she said this is the inches that the neckline was supposed to have, and I think I misunderstood that. And the first version of the sweater, the neckline was too wide. So I think she meant the inches going around like this, and I measured in a straight line, and it was just too wide. And I crocheted the shoulder seams, I crocheted into the neckline, and then when I attached the first sleeve, what happened is that it pulled down and it just slipped off my shoulder. So I undid all the seams, and I undid the shoulder tabs, all 4 of them, and I calculated the inches and calculated the number, and I crocheted new shoulder tabs. So now the neckline is a lot smaller than it was before, but it's big enough for my hat to go through easily. And then once I'd done that, I again crocheted the shoulder seam. What a difficult word. Shoulder seam. It's a tongue twister, isn't it? And then crochet those 2 rounds in the neckline, and again attach the sleeve, and then realized that the sleeve was just too tight. So the first time I did it, because it was slipping off my shoulder, it was a bit lower on my arm, and I didn't really realize. I think basically I knew it was quite tight, but I just didn't want to accept the fact because I didn't want to rework anymore. But as I said, it's just, I don't feel comfortable wearing it like that. I can fit my arm into the pullover. If I didn't wear anything except this jumper, it would be okay. But as it's a fairly warm jumper, I want to be able to wear a shirt underneath. So I decided not to go ahead and finish it, but I will undo this seam. I will take off the sleeve. I will undo part of the sleeve, and then I will just add a few more increases. The sleeve doesn't have a lot of increases the way it's written, and I think that's the style that she was going for. That's perfectly okay. I think nobody else had this problem, but I know I'd feel uncomfortable wearing it like that, and I think it's so beautiful, and I really like the rest of the pattern. I like the look of the yarn, and I really want this to be a pullover that I love wearing and that I will wear a lot. And for that, I just need the sleeve to be a bit wider where it attaches to the front and back. So I'll just go down maybe 7 or 8 rounds, and then I'll probably, and I'll just do a few more increases so that it just gets a bit wider, and then it'll be more comfortable, and I really love the pullover. So as I said, I wrote to Heather. I let her know all the problems I was having. I told her I wasn't going to get it done by the deadline, and but now I'll just have to put in a few more days of work, and then I'll have a pullover that I'm really, really happy with, and I can't wait to put it on. Okay, so that is everything I knit and crocheted on last week. It doesn't seem like a lot, but then these socks really took a lot of time, and but I could stop here, but I thought I'll just show you a few more things. And one of the things that I brought is the Optic Blanket. And even though I did not put in a new square, I just thought I'll show you the part I was working on plus my first square. So these are the kind of squares made out of 9 squares that I'm aiming for. And And the plan is to put 2 of these next to each other to get the width of the blanket, and then a third one for the length. So I need 6 of these squares to get the whole blanket. Yeah, so this week maybe I'll do 2 squares this week. Oh, by the way, there won't be a proper regular podcast next week because I'm taking an Easter holiday, but I filmed a special where I talk about some of my favorite knitting and crochet books. So that will be published next Monday, so you'll have something to watch. But it means I have 2 weeks of time until the next proper episode. Yeah, and I think I'll stick to the 1 square a week then, because that means that next week, next time I film, this square will be done. Yeah, I should probably stick to that. And instead of rushing this blanket, work a bit on the other projects. Now you've seen that blanket a lot lately, but another blanket I'm working on and haven't shown on the podcast for a long time is my All Memories blanket that I am knitting. And the plan is to put a square into this blanket for every project that I knit out of sock yarn. So with the first blanket that I knit from that pattern, I was just using up all my leftover yarn. But this one, I just want 1 square for every project. So if I do 2 projects with the same yarn, I can have 2 squares with the same color. But otherwise, there'll just be 1 square for every project. And basically what I wanted to do is whenever I finish a project, like the pair of socks now, I put in a square into the blanket. But I'm so behind with all the projects that I have finished in the last couple of months that I have a full bag of yarn waiting to be put into this blanket. And I will try and start working on that again, maybe during the Easter holidays, not holidays, but the days off. Maybe I can put some work in here. Another blanket I'm working on very loosely on and off is this one. And it's just basically a green blanket. And what I did here is I used those mini opal balls of yarn. They have 10 grams each, and I sell them in my shop. And at some point I noticed that a lot of the ones that I didn't sell have some green in them. It's not that they're not nice. I really like those colors, but because there were so many left over, I decided to do a green blanket. And I tried it, and I can crochet 9 rounds with 10 grams of opal yarn. So I started crocheting green squares, and at some point I started attaching them with this light green opal yarn. And most of these squares were crocheted with those minis, but a few of them I crocheted with leftover yarn from big yarn skeins. If I did a project with some opal yarn that had green in it and I had enough yarn left to crochet a square, I would do that. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this blanket, so there's no rush there, and I'll just keep adding squares with green yarn to this pile. So that's the blankets, and then there's one more project that I would like to show you to kind of motivate myself to keep working on it, and that's the second version of the Carnaby crochet along pullover. There was a crochet along in the Simply Crochet magazine last year. It started in January and was and every month they would publish one part of either the pullover or the blanket that you could make. And I crocheted a pullover out of opal sock yarn DK weight with all the neon colors and black. And but because I couldn't finish it, because I had to wait for the instructions to be published, I started a second one in different colors, and that's this one. This is cotton yarn by Schachenmeier, Catania. It's that yarn in the shelf behind me, and I picked several blue colors plus white and crocheted those pieces with the same. It's the same pattern as the other one, but just because of the different colors, it looks so different. And I have finished all the pieces except for the sleeves. So the last or second to last magazine that had a bit of the instructions, it had this part of the front and back, and then you crochet the sleeves in the same pattern, and then you only have to sew or crochet the pieces together. And I decided to concentrate on the sock yarn version first because it was still winter and I wanted to wear that in winter, which I have done. And now that spring and summer are coming, I want to get the cotton version finished so I can wear that. And the first thing I need to do now is crochet the sleeves, and then I will have to assemble the whole thing. Yeah, so having seen that now, and I can hopefully work on those projects plus the ones that I showed you last week that I didn't get to during the last week. But yeah, the Sockmadness should it should take a while for the next round to start, let it put it this way. So from what I've learned, the every round either continues for 2 weeks or until all the spots have been filled. So, I haven't told you that. The teams, from what I could see, there are 26 teams for every letter in the alphabet, and every team has around 60 members. Some have a few more, some have a few less. And in this first round, 50 people will go on to the next round. So the first 50 in each team who finish their socks and send the email can go on to the second round. And the others, I think, will turn into cheerleaders. I'm not quite sure if you become a cheerleader automatically or only if you finish your socks, but you're too late. Either because the spots have been filled or because the 2 weeks are over. I'm not quite sure about that. I'll find out when I don't make it to the next round, then I'll let you know. So if all the 50 spots are filled in less than 2 weeks, the round is over in less than 2 weeks. But I think especially in the beginning where there are so many spots to be filled, they will probably take the 2 weeks, I think. And after that, we'll have to wait again for the specifications of the next pattern and then the pattern itself. So I think part of the next 2 weeks, I won't be knitting on any Sockmadness socks. So I should have time for all my other projects. Yeah, so a bit different today than usual. I hope you don't mind. I hope you'll enjoy the special that I filmed for next Monday. I wish you nice Easter if you celebrate. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.